I'd like to call, welcome to the Madison Public Schools Board of Education workshop meeting for purposes of discussing budget. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and everyone please rise for the allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I don't know if we have anyone here publicly wants to speak or online, but next on the agenda is public participation. Do we have anyone still here other than administrators? Thank you. Anyone online? No. Okay. So now the next agenda item is our superintendent's report, and Dr. Cook will walk us through the 2025-2026 recommended budget.
Yes, thank you, Seth, and thank you for the opportunity to address the budget tonight. I received a number of questions from board members between last meeting and this meeting, and we kept a running tally and provided that to you today. There was some that came in as recent as I think it was Monday, so we needed some time, but we did get those all back to board members. I thought I would start there and see if there's any follow-up questions to the answers that we provided. For the most part, they were relatively straightforward. I appreciate again the questions coming in ahead of time. It gives Stacy and myself and staff the chance to review that and get that to you.
And can I just ask, do we have a board member online? Is Christine online?
No.
Yeah.
So the question we sent is honest to follow up with that.
I just didn't know if there was an answer that wasn't clear or you needed a little bit more detail.
I do.
Sure.
So item 362, again, to go back to behaviors,
Yes.
and it says it pays for staff that work directly with students regarding behavior issues. There's also support teachers and school administrators. But who are they? Who are the what is their, who are they?
Oh, so there's two types. We have BCBAs that have a certification to work with.
So they are teachers that have the certification.
They're
So
certified.
they're not staff.
Yeah, it's a certified staff member. Then we have some non-certified staff members as well that may do that. Like a para one-to-one or a para with some additional training that works. It's a person, yes.
And so do they have like a schedule, or do they?
Yeah, they would go between buildings or maybe stationed at one of the bigger buildings. So some students will potentially have a behavior intervention plan, and so they work with staff on that. They have additional details.
Working in the school,
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
So
Yeah.
I just didn't realize, who the people were.
Right, yeah. And Liz, am I leaving anything? Yeah.
Yeah, we have, years ago, we used to contract out with ACEs, but then, we ended up, the second year I was here, we started, hired our own staff. We were able to have more BCBAs and then the registered behavior technicians who work underneath them. And like, Dr. Cook said, we have 2 in the district, and they each work at, a couple of the schools. They kind of split up the.
So they make a schedule and they have certain.
Exactly, yeah, like Monday they
They're not in a classroom or.
They do go into the classrooms to help to support the staff, so.
But I mean, they're not assigned to like a.
No, they're not assigned to a classroom. When a student is having some behavior challenges, they will help to write the plans, and they will help to teach the staff how to implement the plans, and they will also model for us how to implement the plans.
And are they used like in emergency situations?
Yes, if there's something where staff members are needed to help a student to self-regulate, they are called for that.
Okay. I just do that one.
I think it probably is wise at this point to point out the fact that, first of all, thank the board members who got your questions in advance. I think that helps the process go more smoothly. It allows Stacy, Craig, and other department heads and such to respond in a more full manner, give us a full response. So thank you very much thank you all, the administration, and central office staff for answering the questions. Does anyone else have any remaining questions based on those that were already addressed?
I appreciated all the responses. It was great.
Yeah,
It was.
Clear.
and really, they were pretty clear. That was just one that I.
Yeah, no, it's a good follow-up question. Yeah, glad we were able to clarify that.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's no more questions on that, I'm gonna go to a document that I also sent forward just today. It was finalized. The plan was finalized in some ways last night, but we're still working out on some of the details. I'll admit I have been 12 years of presenting budgets. I've never done this piece of budgeting where I'm asking for an addition to my budget that I just submitted a week prior. And so hopefully, it's not something we make a habit of, but I do think it's important. And I will say the elementary model. So when I reference that, I'm talking about the pre-K to 5 model that we are just about finalized with in terms of what I would present next week on the 21st. So just to back up a little bit, we will have that PowerPoint ready within the next couple of days. I will send it out to the board, by the end of the day on Friday, but hopefully much earlier than that. We're shooting for Thursday morning, and then also share that with the community. But there is a piece, so I understand it's a little awkward, but there is a piece that impacts staffing when that does happen. And so I would need the board to take action on that for this plan to be put in place. And so I've provided you with that document, that one pager today, and to kind of walk you through that. It would impact 3 areas, and from receiving input and having lots of conversations with families, receiving student input, and talking to staff this week. What I am recommending, that the administration is recommending to add to the budget, is a full world language teacher for the elementary level. So this would be Spanish, to add back additional Spanish to the previously shared schedule. 0.3 theater. So this would add back some theater time. We thought it was very important that the theater time we do add back would be for all students. I think we heard that loud and clear, that we could offer after school programming that would be high quality and beneficial, but that families thought it was very important that all students receive that theater piece. And so we were looking to add a theater piece back, and then also a music piece that would really be focused more on the instrumentals and being orchestra and band and ensemble for those areas. So we would really increase in that area from where we are right now for the music in particular. So that is a 1.8 add per FTE. We are talking about specific staff. We're able to do that. Sometimes, when I add a position, we're talking about someone we haven't hired yet, or someone or a position we're not able to determine, but we're pretty certain in terms of where these positions would be. So that's an actual cost that can always change. As you know, I could get a resignation tomorrow that could impact that number, but we're looking at $121,000 in terms of the impact of those 1.8 FTE adds. And I also showed to you below the budget impact. So whereas before it was a 2.27% increase proposed, considering the debt decrease, it's now a 2.46. When you do not consider the debt, it's a 2.87 was the original request, and now it's a 3.06. I will tell you, I feel pretty confident on this. Talking to other superintendents, I had a meeting with superintendents last Friday. A mid-2 budget increase is going to be one of the lowest in the state again. We are able to achieve that. I think we do have several indicators or challenges ahead of us still in other years, but this was a year where a lot of things aligned to be able to make a a low budget request, and we were able to accomplish that. Again, administrative team starting to work in early September, but even in a lot of cases before that, where reductions were made, led to that to be possible. And I think we're still within really that target range of the Madison reinvestment plan, and so I do suspect, and I'm not speaking for anybody, but I do suspect that the other boards will be appreciative of the total cost that we're asking for here. And I predict that it would be well received. But I know we have a long way to go in that process. Lots of conversations still to have.
Can I comment on this and then open it up if anyone else wants to comment? As this board has mentioned before, like at our last public meeting, the reason for the proposed changes to the 4-5 instructional scheduling model were not budget driven. While we have an opportunity and that opportunity to make changes in response to what the parents have expressed and what the students have expressed will have an impact on the budget. It was not budget driven that the related arts were originally slated to potentially be reduced a bit. I want to, wholeheartedly and sincerely on the part of the board, and with, I want to thank, Dr. Cook and the administrative team for taking the parental concerns and comments and the student concerns into account wholeheartedly, and trying to find creative ways to get some of those related arts back in. And I think as a board, it's incumbent on us to support that in the budget. I certainly plan to. I think we're going to end up in a good place compared to where we started. And where we started was all a good faith effort to reconcile the schedule against trying to keep the teaming model, which is the thing that the parents and the students love above all else. We did start out with more generous related arts than most other districts at that age range. But once you have it and you see what it does for the kids, it's hard to part with it. And I really thank the administrative team, Dr. Cook, Gail, and everyone for finding a way to get some of that back in. Thank you.
Dr. Cook, this, it's very nice. But what about the team? What about the team approach? Like, what about that? Has that been talked about at all?
So we'll still be able to keep that. That was always in there. And I think that we talked about that a lot because that did require a pretty significant commitment, and it does going forward. So I think that even though that's not changing, I just wanted to be very clear and kind of the commitment and what that kind of causes throughout the building and things like that. But yes,
I know that was a
teaming model,
yeah.
which is very well received by our families and students and teachers. Will be there for 4 and 5.
So how exactly did you fit it in?
Yeah, how did we fit? So what happens with that is you do move in teams of 2. So you go from 4, because now we're split between 2 buildings for grades 4 and 5. So in some grade levels, you'll have 4 in each of the schools. And then sometimes when a bubble goes through, rather than go to 5, you go into 6. So there is an additional cost to that. I think it's important to be clear about that. But there's a commitment that we make. And I will say too, I think the piece that I appreciate about it is math and language arts. Education is getting a little bit harder at that point. There's the curriculum is ramping up. It's hard to teach certainly throughout all grade levels, but in 4th and 5th grade math, some teachers are not comfortable teaching that. It's like from over the years. And so when you have a teacher that is very comfortable with the 5th grade math curriculum and they're able to teach not only to 20 students but 40 students, I think you see good results on that, and they're able to teach the same subject area twice in one day, rather than have to teach all four areas, which is a huge challenge. I think that we often forget, what magic and the amount of work goes into teaching in the second, third grade class, and first grade. It's really.
I mean, the removal of the theater and.
How did this happen? I got you. Yes. So the first area we looked at, because those students do not have that currently, was the library period. So we had added, if you remember that first model, a library period to that day. So we took that out, and we'll continue that as is current. That library is scheduled with between the teacher and the library media specialist. So as the teacher's working on a particular topic, usually in language arts, they will make let the library media person know, and they'll come to the library, and so students can then have that interaction in the library, and we'll support them through that. So that's no longer a guaranteed time each day, which is also a transition for students. So you kind of lose 5 minutes on each end of that in some ways. So Spanish is really kind of taking the place of that. Music, we're still kind of hashing out when that happens. It would be happening in the morning though, so we lose some time a little bit in the morning. And theater will be, it will be coming out of core, curriculum. It will probably come out of the additional science and social studies time that we found. But we still are picking up time in those areas, which we feel is important, because we have heard over the years that we're not teaching enough science and social studies from families as well. So I think it's important not to lose sight of that, what we were doing. And I asked Heather Dobson when we were working through this, because remember, Heather does all the iterations with the staffing and things like that. I said, is this like model number 10? And she's like, no, I think it's more like 15 or so. So this is like 15.0 or 15.1 that we're sharing. There was a lot of different conversations that happened, and I think this is a good one that our administrative team does feel good about.
I would just like to say thank you to the parents and who came last week, but also who wrote letters, and especially to the kids who voiced their feelings about all of this. And I think it's such a great lesson for them that your voice matters. And I know I speak for everyone on the board when I say that we really do appreciate hearing how you feel, and we take it all into consideration. So I just wanted to say that.
I do have a point to make though. Like we received a bunch of letters, we had parents come, but I guess I'm kind of curious as to like the percentage of parents that actually were upset about this, because there's a larger percentage of parents that we did not hear from. So are we making these changes based on a small, very vocal group of people? Is this something that the administration and teachers really feel that we should be changing to stick closer to what we had? Because this model of having that much Spanish and everything was not always in Madison. It was not always taught that way. And, previous classes did not have mandatory theater. It was an option, it was an elective. And some students chose not to do it because they did not have that interest. And, everyone says, oh, it's, very good to have a foreign language early on, but not everybody wants to take Spanish. So like there's the opposite side, I think, to be thought of as well. There's a very large percentage, I think, of parents who didn't say anything, and we don't know how they feel. And so I just want to put that out there as devil's advocate, that we can't always change things because a very small vocal group of people want something. So I'm very interested to know what the teachers and the administration thought about the removal and then putting it back in.
I think part of it is that it wasn't really a change. It was, we were taking away something that was already there. It wasn't like we decided to just do it half, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's been there for a while, right?
Like 7 years. And before that, it wasn't, and all those kids that we graduated did very well. They got sealed by literacy, they did AP Spanish, they went on to take Spanish in college. So it's not like, and I'm not saying that I disagree with it, I'm just making the point that we did very well in the previous model as well with the less Spanish, et cetera. And then to change it and then everybody loves it and then we change it again and everyone's in an uproar or a percentage of people
But
are.
also, I think you have to, we don't know what percentage, really. It's not everybody that we've heard from.
Right, and I'm not discounting what the parents or the students think. But I really am interested to know what the teachers and administration thought about the changes.
I will say that everything in here was in one of those prior models, like, you know, as we went through, we talked about all those different areas and a lot of the conversations that Gail and I and Frank, Kelly and Becky have had over the last you know, week and a half looking at this, you know, even more thoroughly is that we have to be careful in terms of when comparing ourselves to different districts, because I think you say this district has, you know, this amount of music, but then when you look through and Gail's office did that work, you know, there's different areas that they're lower than us on. So, you know, I think what I felt badly was Madison was painted as this town that doesn't care about related arts when we did have this, you know, wonderful related arts model. We added related arts to pre-K to 3. So if that was the case, why would we be adding it to pre-K to 3? So, you know, I say that, but I just want to be clear. I think everybody, you know, the administration working through this, the teachers, no one got everything they wanted, but I think that it does have some good pieces, and I think each model got better as we went through, and we feel good about where things are at right now. You know, it's to say that, you know, Diane, you're right. In 1819 was the first time that this model was in place, so it hasn't been this long standing piece. And then if we remember too, fourth grade was moved to Brown based on you know, the closing of Island Avenue. It was, you know, and so when they joined and they inherited that intermediate school model, that middle school type model, and there it wasn't because I believe, you know, I wasn't here at the time, it wasn't because the district said, oh my goodness, we need to move fourth grade to Brown School so they can have this related arts model. It was, you know, we're moving through and making those changes, and so this was one of those changes that was coming. As soon as the referendum passed, the die was cast that we were going to have changes to that elementary or that Brown model and the elementary model as the two, you know, the schools combined. So I say all that though, you know, as I shared, I think this is not a huge cost impact, and it does you know, provide some continuity for fourth graders who you know, again, as we've heard frequently and we've thought about for years, have a lot of transitions. So those fourth graders do receive a lot of transitions, and if there was another way to not have them have those transitions, I think we would have looked at that, but there was just no way to do that, because, you know, you'll have students that were in third grade at Jeffrey, fourth grade at Brown, fifth grade at Neck River, sixth grade at Folsom. So that's a lot of transition. I think the more that we can you know, keep things is much the same for them. It'll be good. And that, you know, as well too, there's a heavy investment in STEAM at the elementary level. So that's a piece where we look at that we'll be able to get science instruction, you know, throughout, and you know, that the lower grades benefit from that as well. So I think that that's really exciting for us moving forward, you know, with that.
And that was one of the pieces that was reduced, STEAM, in the one model, and then because there was some pushback that about it as well, because it's a reduction of STEAM, reduction of theater, reduction of music.
It was a reduction in coding, and so it's actually an increase in STEAM, which will have the coding as part of that. It just is a reduction in the coding piece. Yeah, but it's also, we'll have STEAM in earlier grades, so that's a benefit for us as well. So we think of that as an exciting way to provide science instruction for students.
So they're not losing the STEAM.
No.
Just want to be clear.
Stephen?
You know, this has been a difficult issue, you know, because it was two aspects that were in competition with each other and overlapping each other. One that had to do with scheduling and one that had to do with curriculum. And some of it had to do with what falls under the purview of the board and what things are more issues of the administration. That being said, as a member of this board and as chair of the curriculum committee, I was delighted that there was so much respectful communication to this board and to this district around a core curricular issue and people's feelings about that. Now, as Diane says, that doesn't necessarily mean, that the board looking at the entire constellation responds to that or chooses to go along with it. But I also am really pleased with how this board and the administration and the superintendent have, one, heard that, two, set up meetings to articulate and communicate and answer questions to the public. This is what we always want. We want the community to come around things that are relevant to their children in this district and speak their minds and their heart. And that happened in a way that really hasn't happened since I've been on the board to this degree. And I was delighted with that and the response. And quite frankly, I like the solution.
Thank you. Anything else? Steve? No? Okay. Thanks. I'm gonna move on with execution. Thank you.
So. You received the presentation last week, it is, and that concludes my report for tonight.
Unless anyone has other questions or.
So regarding the school health services, pre-K to 5, each school needs 2 nurses. Are we hiring another nurse or do we have?
No, we have we'll have the same number of nurses as we do.
And
right
they're
now. So we have
nurses or are they like the?
nurses, yes,
all nurses?
yeah, so we have a nurse at TCLC, because there's a pretty significant needs, at that area, and it's the first time students are in school, so there's also some other health
Everyone's
cases that
sick.
needs to happen. Everyone's sick, and I know the board wants a nurse at each location as well, and we have students at, there's been that commitment over the years, and so we feel with a building of 550 to 600 students, 2 nurses is needed.
It was over, I think it's over 500, you have to have, or maybe it's 700, you have to have at least two
Yeah,
hours.
right,
So where will that
also-
TLC nurse go?
so we'll have 2 and 2, we're still working out the exact staffing, yeah.
And then nothing changes at Fall Center.
Yeah, I think one of the things this will provide us too is potentially on days where Nurse Lesnick can get some, as the head nurse, get some release time where there's coverage for her, and so she can then be out in the buildings working with the nurses. I think we've talked about a couple different ways to accomplish that, but this gives us a good position, and then if a nurse is out, we can't get a sub nurse, at least we still have a nurse in those buildings, or you might need to send one to the middle school, so it does provide us some flexibility in staffing.
So did we increase, like, for substitute teachers? I know we're still doing building-based substitutes. Did we like lose substitutes? Are we trying to increase pay for encouraging them to stay? Like, what is the increase?
Yeah, so increased pay. We've had, and I think you pointed this out in other years too, increased costs, and that amount will be running a negative. Oftentimes though, I will share, when that runs negative, that means that our salary account is running to the positive, because we either have an open position we haven't filled yet, or we have a staff member who is out, and sometimes that's without pay, that a person is out. So that's always a function of those pieces. So we watch those accounts very closely, and felt we needed to increase that for substitute coverage.
So, and we are reducing one armed security officer, that's 1 FTE, or is it like, because I know that we were sharing one between like, it was Ryerson and Brown had a shared. So how is that working? Because we're closing the school, so now.
Yeah, we're looking at different sites, we cover 6 sites right now, and so we're looking at 4 sites reopen up, so we're still working through that, but that's a piece that we're,
So we're definitely reducing by one.
yeah,
Both still have the same coverage.
yes.
Yeah.
I think another thing worth discussing just very briefly is I think it was $109,000 for the, I forget the name of the geos, yeah. I don't know if you want to just.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off and turn it over to Gail. So we're in the pilot mode. I know Gail presented to the board the work that her crew did over the summer. I believe that was that. I don't know if it was late spring or summer, but they looked at the different pieces and came out with a geodes and pilot. I don't know where you get that.
Yeah, actually, met with all of the teachers, K through 3 in the past week in small groups, both at Ryerson and Jeffrey. Talked about our coach to literacy, schedule for literacy, how geodes were going. And the recommendation from the committee, we did survey our teachers who piloted in December, at the end of December, and the recommendation was to go forth and purchase geodes for every classroom. So we are doing that. We actually had a request from grade 3 to see when the third grade's resource of geodes would be released. And that would be released this summer. So we're pursuing that as well. They are interested, they're looking at the grade 2 and they're doing some observations in classrooms of how that's going, but it seems to be a welcome resource. It is heavy in nonfiction. It's highly engaging titles. There's thorny lizards and all sorts of creepy creatures that you have to learn a lot about. So the kids are really interested. The teachers like the structure of the vocabulary, and it also introduces them to areas of the world that they're not normally exposed to. So that's been a hit resource. It doesn't take the place of everything that we're doing. It's an addition to what we're doing. And nor does it fully purchase all of the materials that is on the state list, but it gets 75% of the materials purchased. So we're happy to recommend that. That is our recommendation at this time.
And I just want to kind of also remind the board that this is a product of our, I guess, our delicate balance that we've been doing with regard to the state mandated right to read act. We're not thumbing our nose at the state by any means, and our adoption of geodes is actually a step in the direction that the state, wanted to see from districts, but at the same time, we're maintaining our own homegrown structure and our homegrown curriculum in reading, K-3 reading, in other important ways that we felt through the curriculum process were important for us to maintain. So, this is kind of like our measure of in good faith. But if the teachers like it, if we think it's going to work, fine, let's do it. So that has the $109,000.
Taking it from the teacher recommendation that they found it's a good resource and helpful to
Yeah.
teaching the kids. So they are definitely a key component of this.
And 109,000 for the geodes, that includes like all of the workbooks and all of that, or do we have to actually do?
There's no workbooks with
Okay.
geodes. This is not one that came with
requires-
workbooks. This is like
This is the
little
program.
decodable texts. So they're like little books that kids hold in their hands. There's some that are consumable that you can send home, but that's not a necessary component of this program. It's really for in classroom, and they're little readers, similar to some other little readers that we've used, but they're heavy and nonfiction and they're just a little bit more structured. They're available K-2, and that's the 109,000 is training and implementation for that grade level span. So it does not extend into grade 3 at this time.
But it's like an addition to a classroom library.
So it's not, so we're not purchasing any sort of consumables with it, this is everything that stays in the classroom.
Yeah, there's no necessary component of consumables. There are some supplemental consumables, but they're not necessary. You don't
And we're not getting.
They're included in the first kit.
Oh, okay.
they'll get the freebie.
But this also, this particular program goes along with the state, so we
Oh,
are
yeah.
compliant to
that
to
degree.
that degree.
To that degree,
We're not
yes.
100% compliant.
No,
And so we don't have anything built into the budget either, but what is it's like a moving target with the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, they were looking at July of 2025. We're having ongoing discussions with the state. I would give the impression that we're getting somewhere fast with them, though. I will say, I know there's been bills proposed this legislative session to repeal right to read as a whole. I know there's bills that are going to require a more a different kind of waiver process, to say it the nice way. And so, you know, we're hopeful, I think, and we'll support those. You know, we've already given some opinions and support for those areas, because I think that's the right way. I always say our reading program is better today and will be better July 1 than it was at the start of this process. So, you know, we're thankful to have gone through it, but we still feel strongly that last piece, purchase that, being the most expensive purchase, and then also where's the time coming from, and then it's not as good as what we're doing right now, so we do feel strongly about that, and that was feedback we got from our teachers and administrators.
yeah, we actually had a trainer with us this past week in all those grade level meetings, who's provided training in vocabulary and comprehension to a great degree. An expert in dyslexia that we've used over the past couple of years, so that was great. Looked at our proposed schedules and how we're fitting everything in. Met with him today, and we're on good standing as far as the work related to the research. Yeah, I think that again, I wouldn't come to the table if the teachers didn't feel it was an improvement to the program, and if we didn't see the value. I would never make a recommendation that wasn't in keeping with money well invested towards some.
So then going forward, would this become an annual 109,000 for geos, or just like a one-time?
Well, it's never one time because it's handling.
Well, I mean, but it's not something that you have to purchase annually.
It's not a have to purchase annually, but you know, they are thin little books, you know, you will have to replace libraries and stuff. We're gonna have to invest in our classroom libraries. They are well loved. And that's where we want our books to be. And Craig will tell you, he's sick and tired of me talking about libraries, books and stuff, but that is important. We want our kids handling them all the time, so. More they're used, the better.
But I think the point of raising that issue is, I think it's important that we as a board recognize that in taking a vote on this budget, including that $109,000, we're voting to reinforce that balance that we've been doing between what we feel we're doing right at home and what, you know, the state is asking for districts to do. So I think we're kind of like, you know, planting a stake in the ground and taking a position, and I think it's I think we've discussed it to death. You know, it's a strong position, and it's a good place to be for our district, I think.
Since you mentioned libraries, so item 56423 print collection, it's a 95.96% change increase of 75,000. Is this because of the new library at the new school?
No, I believe, and Stacy, you probably know what's in that line. She's thumbing away.
Yeah, I know. I kind of feel
Was it 5-6?
56423 print collection. Like I would have to say, every year I hate these books. They're very difficult to like try to figure out what everything is for, and I blame the program. I don't blame you. I blame the program because of the way that it prints out and everything, but it would be wonderful if we could sort of see like, oh, this is the cost for print supplies for, well, no longer Ryerson, but you know, the Neck River versus the high school versus, because looking through this, we see a lot of -100% because we're closing down schools, and then plus like 200% because it's a new school. And so those numbers are, to me, are almost like meaningless because we know we're closing the schools. Obviously, we're not going to be spending any money on a library at school that's closed. And obviously the new one's gonna, you know, need a lot more. And it's just.
That does trigger part of that number, I'm pretty sure, is because we did not purchase new print collections for the schools that we're closing this year. Because we don't want to pay the books. So
And I
it's
know
really-
that, you know, doing a pre-K to 5 and pre-K to 5 and
You know, it's, but yeah,
books are being moved around, removed, I get that. It's just when you see these itemized numbers, it's very,
it does reinstate in next year's budget funding for the libraries the way that we would typically do. But we did not fund them this year because we were packing and moving collections, so buying more didn't make sense.
it's just more tech.
Exactly, that's kind of a cost.
Yeah.
So the object 56423 includes the geos for $109,000, and that is
Yeah.
on page 46. And then if you are looking for building by program, that is under your by program tab, so if you're looking for a different format to print out, we certainly can make those.
Oh, good, then we'll talk. Cause I can't even express to you how much I hate this booklet, and I've hated it every year we've done the budget, just saying.
And I have one other question, or I have a question, another question. I had asked about the 55610, that's page 23, the extension placements.
Can you repeat the number?
55610. It's on page 23, but it's also on page 24 as a 55630 and then a 55643. I know it's for Al Playster. Of students. But it's like 3 different times that I just wanted. So 55610, 55630? Yes, and then 55643. Okay, so 10 and 30, those are special ed external placements. Right, and they're just separate, is that what it is? Is they? Yeah, they're in.
Private.
Yeah, so they were all 3 of them, and then on 55643. There's also that with a G next to it. That's our.
Oh, general education,
That's general, that's regular ed,
like an expelled student.
so that's in the event that a student who's a regular education student needs to attend another facility for some reason.
Some, you know, because the way it's written, there's a lot of, you know. The little extension and the extensions, you know.
Sure.
And why would the 2 special ed be different? Why would they make it 6 places?
Is that private and public?
Yes.
Yes.
One is the 55610 is public. For special ed, and 55630 is private. For special ed.
And we have to code that differently for the state when we submit that.
No one's right.
In the detail from the pages that you're looking on, Marianne, we actually have the detail on pages 40 and 41. If you wanted to see bird drill down. That would help me. Probably should have done that. Sense to me. Oh, right. Starline, not expected.
Other questions? Christine, did you have any questions? I know you're online.
I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Okay,
So
so,
I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, when we renegotiated the cafeteria contract and we had a complete change of contract, we expected to have some sort of savings because we were no longer going to be the employers for the food employees. So how have we materialized the savings within this program?
I think you see it in different places. I think one is the health insurance costs, you know, so that is a piece of that. 2 is that we have lost more than expected in many of the previous years. And so that was something that, you know, Mr. Sickles been working on. So I think that it was, you saw it at the end of the year, last year, and you'll see it again at the end of this year, that there's less of a loss in that area. And then, Art, am I missing anything, or Stacy, that like to add to that piece?
Because we still have line 53,000 unbudgeted expenses.
Correct.
What you're saying is it covers the shortage in food services.
Pretty typical for school districts is, you know, that, you know, you're selling meals for anywhere from $3 to, you know, $4, $4.50 at the high school. And when you think about the cost of labor costs, food costs, things like that, it doesn't really add up. You know, that well, so most districts do have a budgeted loss in that area. And so we've kind of kept that steady. Yeah.
Additionally, the medical benefits piece,
Yes.
that's the general fund. And everything else from the operations of the food service fund. So you don't see, it's not exactly comparable, you know, because you're looking at the general fund. When you're looking at the book. And correct me if I'm wrong, any of that, but also the food costs are a problem this year.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Everybody is experiencing that. But you know, at the moment, we are looking like we're on track to be close to last year. Not quite as good, but close, and it says a lot with the cost of food as it's going down, and the fact that the food service operating budget is absorbing everything.
And so then just looking forward with the reorganization of the schools and the pre-K to 5 model gonna be in 2 schools, how does that, is that gonna impact, you think, the cost of like because the food offerings are different at different levels, but now we'll have 2 major schools with the pre-K to 5 where it's like less offerings?
Well, I think that the general plan is that the principals have been looking at the grades that will be in which lunch waves, and the 4th and 5th grades will have more offerings, and they would probably, I don't want to speak to exactly where they would be in the course of the day. They'd be-
Oh, so it is gonna be different within the
They'll be
school?
different within the school, but not enough to say it's a school within a school. It's all gonna be at Neck River, it's all gonna be up around, but there will be more offerings for the older kids.
Interesting.
Similar to what they have now.
Oh, good, so we don't have to worry about planning about that. Same.
I have another question. 56112, the STEAM. There was no previous, so there was no actual, no original, no revised, it just came up as $13,000 and then over original 13.
Yeah, I can answer that. So right now, STEAM does not exist in programming in 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade, so we have to invest in some materials, yeah. So that was an initial estimate of what it would take to
And we don't know.
build something.
So I did notice though that I'm looking for the line item now, there's like a STEAM line item, there it is, 244, is 5,000 for, it's Brown. So then the new school though, is actually allotted more, and is that because of the number of students? That's 8,000 for STEAM under Neck River.
Yes, there's more.
So what is
students.
then what is the 56112, Steve?
There's an initial outlay of investment that you make to outfit a STEAM classroom. But that probably is modest in terms of funding. And then there's some ongoing funding of consumables in STEAM. The STEAM is very hands-on and product-based.
So those are pretty separate.
I think the 56112 is the same as what Diane was asking. There's 5,000 for Brown and 8,000 for now.
Oh, I see, it comes to 13.
Makes sense.
Okay.
I was just noticing the difference, and I was assuming it was a student population.
There's a population
Yeah,
difference between the 2 schools.
making sure there's parity. So I have a question about the NEASC accreditation. So I know it's not, I know it happens over several years, and I know that it's not every year, but it's a line item every year. So I guess my question is, what is exactly the cost every year? if we're not actually doing it every year? Is it, it's not dues, because you said that's folded in under the dues section, dues fees, membership line item. But. And I know it's not the same every year, because I know in the years that we actually have them come visit, it's higher for the cost, right? But I'm just wondering, you know, is it something that we spend money on every single year? Or is this a line item?
So there is a membership fee to belong to NEAS. And
That
we
was-
also go
That's under
on-
dues and memberships.
And we also go on visits and and we also go to conferences for NEAS. I don't know what's built in. Is it built into the high school line?
So I could respond, we have a membership fee, like Gail said, I believe it's around $7,000 a year to be part of NEASC. And when NEASC recently changed the process, if you recall, 4 years ago, we had a collaborative conference visit that was about $5,000. We had a budget for that particular visit, which is a completely new process, started for us, you know, obviously in 2022. NEASC recommends that you actually budget in preparation for the most recent decennial visit, which took place in November of this year, $15,000. And that includes $7,000 as well as a significant amount of money needed to pay for hotel rooms for the 8 guests, pay for food, pay for all their mileage. And you also get charged about a $4,500 fee for the decennial visit as well. So it's quite an expensive process, to say the least, but now the 10-year cycle starts again. So the typical membership fee will be over the next 8 years until the next collaborative conference visit, and then the decennial visit in 2035.
So I guess I'm wondering if the membership dues fall under the dues fees membership line item, this NEASC line item. It's about, I looked back, I think like 4 budgets ago. And it's like around 4,000 or 5,000, and then, you know, when they come visit, it's bumped up. But I guess I'm not really understanding what. Like the way that you described it, it sounds like in 1 year, it should be like a $15,000 line item, and then the next year, it's maybe like. You know, less than that, like a lot less than that, but yet I'm seeing pretty. Annually, this $4,000 or $5,000 amount, and if it's not something, I'm just not understanding what that money is for.
Like you think in the off years, there could be several years where it would be zero funding.
Right, cause if it's like
That's not the case. Each year we have to pay.
right, but that's a different line item, that would be under membership dues, this is a
Yeah.
NEASC line item?
Yeah, the 7,000.
Oh, it is under the,
Yeah.
cause, okay, so that was. Cause in the answer, it said NEASC membership dues are built into dues fees membership line item, but it's actually not, so the membership dues for NEASC. Falls under the NEASC line item,
Under the 5-3.
okay, so that makes sense now. That was my.
Unless there are any other questions, so one of the potential purposes of this meeting was to call a motion to vote on the budget. Now, my understanding is that some of the members of the board may not feel entirely comfortable voting this evening, whereas others may. But rather than calling it to a vote, if people don't feel comfortable, we can put the vote off until the meeting on the 21st.
Until we have that piece in place. For the new school with the added,
I think what we would be voting on would be included.
yeah,
Yeah.
would that be included?
Yeah.
I mean.
So that would
already-
be,
that's
you'd
right.
be voting on that.
I
If you
want-
voted tonight, I would ask that you. vote
Yeah, I
on
wasn't sure if that
Yeah.
was finalized
Yeah.
and definite.
But I want to be sensitive to some members who express that they may not feel comfortable voting this evening. So I spoke to Craig about it, and he does feel comfortable that if we vote on the 21st, you know, that's enough time, right? We don't need to vote tonight. So I'm willing to entertain, you know, pushing that off until the 21st. if-
That
if
would be
folks
the
would
only
like.
thing added to the budget.
Correct.
Okay,
What's
so
anybody out there?
So we still have 2 union contracts pending, and they're not being negotiated until spring.
correct.
So how do we have it
Placeholder.
budgeted in so that we have wiggle room for changes?
Heather does her best estimate, based on trend and shipment recommendations and things like that.
So, the action item is to discuss and take possible action on the administration's 2025-26 recommended budget. I guess the way we would handle this is I'll call for the motion, and if it's, if nobody,
Or should we
Moves
discuss
it or
first if
seconds it.
anyone feels to postpone it before? Can we talk about it before? If anyone feels that.
well, we can't talk about it until we vote on the discuss
Whether
and
we
take
want
possible
it.
action.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, to discuss.
If I don't get a motion and or a second, or if I get a motion and a second and we discuss it and we determine to put off the vote,
Oh, okay.
then,
Okay.
you know, we can table it.
Okay.
Or I suppose I could just ask for a motion to table the vote in lieu of the motion to discuss and take action. Why don't I do that? Okay, so I need a motion to table the budget discussion and vote
So moved.
until January 21st meeting. So that's moved by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christine. Second, Christine. Any discussion on the motion to table the budget discussion?
I did. This is just my personal statement. I'm impressed with the overall low increase that still meets our needs. I'm glad, appreciative that the administration's been responsive to people's opinions on the curriculum changes and support the additions to 109,000, 121,000. We all know that the budget has a lot of moving parts, and I appreciate the time that we all spend to ask questions and the time it takes the administration to answer those questions. So if there's no urgency, then it takes time to absorb new information. I hope that's fine, but I think it's a very good budget.
All said by the finance chair. Thank you. Any other discussion about tabling this?
So we have time on the 21st to take this vote and it won't mess up anything for you, right?
No, I think that the two agenda items for the 21st would be the budget and then also the presentation of the model. You know, so
You're gonna do.
yeah, so we'll do that presentation. I would just ask, while I have the opportunity, and I will have several administrators there for that presentation of the model, and also Stacy would be there for any budget questions, but I would not bring back the full administrators team. So again, if you have any questions that come up, please ask.
I have a question that I can do right now. So with that new model, what happens to the two teachers or the teachers that were teaching Spanish and teaching?
So there was only one teacher who was potentially losing their position through this budget.
And that was,
And
yeah,
the short answer is no, it's
Oh,
it's
it's
the other area. So that person would have a position, you know, at this point in the budget process.
okay.
I will say though, at this time in the budget process, it's not uncommon for us to have 3 to 5 people that are in that position where we can't guarantee a position for next year that are on continuing contracts at the high school over the last number of years with declining enrollment, the middle school with declining enrollment places. We've had teachers where we've had to have those conversations where we say we can't guarantee their position. To only have one was that we were in a pretty good position.
Right.
I will say that we're thrilled to be able to bring that person back, you know, to provide positive news at this point. You know, until we finalize the budget, we never really know at that point, but we're in a really good place. And I will say, when we started looking at this 2 to 3 years ago, there was consideration that we were going to lose many more staff, but had retirements over the years and resignations, and we do have some people under short-term contracts that you know, we hope will apply for openings as they come available.
And when
We're in
it
a good
was,
place.
this is just a personal thing, or I just wondered, when they have had to be moved around, the teachers, how has that been, like, has it? Were they asked whether, you know what I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, so the principals all had discussions with people about moving around, what was their preference, you know, which school. You know, I would say for when you talk about a pretty significant move, I mean, everybody is moving somewhere. I don't know if there's any staff member that's keeping their same location, you know, they're all moving, even staff members at Brown are moving within the building. You know, so I think we accommodated, you know, most of the requests we were able to. We do have some people, there's a wide range, you know, some people are, you know, moving, you know, just down the hall and they wanted to be with a different team or something like that to, you know, we had to have difficult conversations that, you know, somebody didn't have a job at the time, but we're in a much better place, and I think we took a lot of time to get input, you know, on where people will be, and we've had changes since, you know, so we've had openings since that have allowed people to move to a job that they wanted, and I think we'll even have more. You know.
Right, so if there's no further discussion on the motion
I
to
have a
table,
comment.
yes, go ahead.
So, I'm a little concerned that, like, we have this new line item STEAM of 13,000, which I wholly support. But like, when you compare the STEAM 13,000 to the increase for world language theater and music of 121,000, I'm kind of wondering, do we have enough money put into STEAM? Like, in my opinion, STEAM's more important, but.
The 121, that's staffing, so that's always gonna be more expensive.
Okay,
Um,
so this is supplies for STEAM, it's not,
Right.
you already have everything else in place,
Yes.
okay. And then, I'm always concerned when I see like, we reduced repairs and maintenance. I mean, it's not a huge reduction, but just having been on facilities for so long, it's like. We've never really go down in that, and I understand we have a new building. However, we still have some of the older buildings, and so I'm just wondering, like, why are we reducing the repairs and maintenance line?
Our repairs and maintenance went to Daniel Land rooftop units, leaks in the roof at Jeffrey, and septic at Ryerson.
We don't
We
have.
won't have any of those things.
But that being said, anybody who has like built
yes,
a
I mean,
house or
I
whatever,
think-
there's always something that happens that's unexpected, and I know we have the
Yes.
unexpected line item, but.
I feel comfortable. Peter and Ben went through line by line, thinking about everything where we're at, and yeah, those three, you know, major issues are no longer going to be there come, you know, mid-July when we finish with the enhanced rooftop units, and so you know, we'll have some pieces, but they're really looking at like what we need going forward. We knew we had a huge electricity increase, and we're concerned with that, so they wanted to be mindful of their account items, and then, you know, I'm sure, you know, if the board wanted to put more money into plan cycle maintenance, they can spend it. You know, we have plenty of needs in the district, but I think we just felt like, you know, we wanted to let the dust settle a little bit from where we're going next year.
That was the one, that's
Stephen?
I'd just like to say, you know, I think this is a very responsible budget. You know, as compared to other districts, and the bulk of this budget is contractual and medical, so the discretionary aspects of this. Relatively smaller, you know, I have no question that item by item. There has been an effort to keep this budget on the very low end of what generally we see in districts, so. You know, I mean, it's a budget that I support, and I think there's been due diligence on the part of the superintendent and his team to keep this within reasonable bounds for the public and for this district.
Yeah, I want to thank the finance committee, our, you know, and our district staff and administration for, you know, what looks to be a great budget that I plan to support. One other bit of good news in that regard is, you know, we've decided not to put solar panels on Neck River School initially because it would interfere with the 1 year post construction warranty that you get. But moving forward, if we find a way to fund largely through grant funding that won't cost us much, if anything at all, solar panels on that new building, then a huge, I think it was $217,000 for electricity in the budget line. We could also look to save moving forward on an annual basis. So, that's just something to keep
Have we
in mind.
received savings from having the solar panels at hand?
Yes, we have the solar panels at the carports at
Oh, yes.
in Polson's, and we do, we have reduced other years. There's monitors in buildings that actually give us feedback in terms of that.
But we've gotten a little bit in the field and we do have a motion to table on that.
Sorry.
Motion to table on the floor. So any other comments or questions on the motion to table? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of motion to table the budget discussion and potential vote until our January 21st meeting? In favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Any
Nay.
one nay. And any abstentions?
Sorry.
No? Okay, so it's 8-0-1 on the motion to table. Thank you. Yes, that's it on this agenda, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Maureen, seconded by. Thank you. To adjourn at 7:08 PM. Discussion, all in favor? All